This panel, this conversation, we're not just about mental health. It's more about how women reshape the mental health in the future. And so with that to start, I would like to have some unconventional introduction to talk their own personal story, how they actually get here to this work. So maybe we can start with Jennifer. You are one of the leading reproductive psychiatrists and being practiced clinical space for more than a decade. However, you also discovered this fantastic genetic biomarker which predict the postpartum depression with almost 80% of accuracy, even before the symptoms shown up. I think 10 years ago, it probably is unimaginable. So what is really the moment actually you realize you need to move from academic finding really into the real world too and help make changes for women?
My story, as you said, really starts 12, 13 years ago when we did a study. We started off in a mouse model, and then we compared the mouse model to blood samples from women that I followed through pregnancy. And we were able to identify an epigenetic biomarker that's predictive of who's at elevated risk of developing postpartum depression. And the wonderful thing about that is that we can do this during pregnancy and be able to say, you know what, you're at high risk, and let me go ahead and refer you to a psychiatrist or a mental health professional, and let's get a plan in place so that we can prevent psychiatric illness in you. As was mentioned, postpartum depression is one of the most common complications of childbirth. It's a leading cause of maternal mortality. I will tell you, though, that 12, 13 years ago, when we had this amazing result, I didn't believe it and I didn't talk about it for several years. And it's only been with replication. We've replicated in 6 different samples now, and we've had an outside group replicate our work that this got serious. And so over the last few years, I've been talking about this biomarker work and working with Dionysus Health, trying to bring this to market. I am a scientist, I'm a psychiatrist, I am not a business person. And so this has been quite a journey for me. I'm very passionate about it because I really would like to see psychiatry move from a reactive field to a preventative field. And I have personal stakes in this game. My daughter has schizoaffective disorder. She got sick when she was 15. And I really want to A, be able to prevent mental illness, and B, reduce stigma. The last panel did a great job talking about the stigma of psychiatric illness and how it gets in the way of appropriate treatments and preventative strategies. And if we have a blood-based biomarker test for a mental illness, I think that's going to do a lot to reduce stigma. So I'll stop there, but that's my story.
Thank you very much, Jen. That's a really powerful foundation. Mariam, I want to start with you next because I really love your personality and I really enjoy talking with you all the time. You have a great sense of humor, but I think you have very special path and not typically seen in healthcare space. You started with applied mathematics and then move on to analytics for Coca-Cola Unilever. And then you also help startup to exit. And then from there, you decide to go back to school in psychology at Harvard and you join a neuroscience research. That is a really fantastic, amazing path. But from there, you seem to realize actually the psychiatry still rely upon very traditional, conventional, old school questionnaires, which really bother you a lot. So what really made you decide to build an AI-based, AI-driven platform actually to decode the human signal? That's really fascinating.
You like literally told my story better than I would do. First of all, I'm a patient myself, so I have very long relationship and very twisted relationship with depression. It runs in my family, so my dad, myself, and my niece. It's literally hereditary, I guess, and we had the same way we felt and experienced depressive episodes. And it's really painful because all of us had suicidal attempts. But it's not a Hollywood story when I like, okay, I'm a patient now, I'm gonna solve it and I'll build a startup. No, it was very twisted. As Joy said, I'm a mathematician. And I worked for very different industries, FMCG, investment banking, and then I ended up in automotive. We had an exit. And I was doing things such as building mathematical models to predict what's going to happen next, analyzing big data, and doing business optimization. Basically, what we call AI right now. So I've been doing AI 15 years ago, and for me, it's not an old field. It's something that I'm just good at, I hope. And after that, I think every AI engineer at that time, like when we're thinking about how to predict what's going to happen to the market or how to predict how much we're going to sell, you're trying to think as a human would think. And that's why the most interesting thing is like, I would like to learn the brain. So that's why after the exit, I decided not to go to Bahamas, but don't go to Harvard and study the brain and understand how brain works. And that's actually was the moment after I graduated and I ended up in a lab studying sex difference and mental health, by the way, how estrogen impacts prefrontal cortex and why women suffer from depression more than men. That was my field of research. But there were some things that actually triggered me as a mathematician and the person from the industry. So I'll tell you, to predict how much cans of Coca-Cola I'm going to sell next month, I was looking at the historical data from 10 years by weeks from 50,000 different customers. And that's helped me somewhat predict what's going to happen. And then I was looking at the brain research. 100 subjects, 100 MRIs, and we're making decisions. Amazing. The second thing that triggered me, we had so much complicated mathematical problems and like different models. And what we're doing in the brain health, correlations. Great. And then finally, I was asking like, hey guys, what are we measuring? They're saying like, what? HUMD scores, matter scores, questionnaires. Like, wait a second, we're just literally asking people, are they depressed or not? And that's how we're trying to predict something and do the studies? They're like, yes, but it's subjective. There is no ground truth. But that's how study works. And this, I was not surprised why medication work only 30% of the cases, why we have so much misdiagnosis, why we have no understanding what is depression. And like, that's why I quit academy and decided, okay, I'm gonna build Brainify AI. My goal is simple. We're gonna do real data-driven studies. We're gonna collect enough data from different people from the world so we can know how actually brain works. And it's not gonna be hundreds of points, not thousands of points. I wanna have millions of points. So whatever we build there, any biomarkers, any diagnostics actually will be scalable. So every patient from United States, Kazakhstan, Ghana, or Japan will actually have something that's going to work. That's how Brainify AI started.
Fantastic. And that's what I heard, mathematics plus neuroscience plus frustration with the status quo that unlocked the breakthrough. Really amazing. All right, so Alex, I think the first panel gave us a good alleviate for, biomarker diagnostics area, but your path, your career is very, very unique. You started as a career as an engineer, and then you actually earned MBA from MIT. You also work with the top-notch consulting firms like Ernst & Young and McKinsey. You joined the high-tech part for defense energy technologies. And then after all this, you decided to step into a company founded by your father. When we talk with each other, really good story you share with me, you feel actually frustrated by spending actually double the efforts. You have to prove twice, both as a founder's daughter and also as a woman. But I think in general, you did a really fantastic job for building this new precision diagnostic for mental disorders. So actually, what drive you to this area? Could you share your story?
Sure, thank you. I think there are three things that actually changed a lot of things in my path. First is impact. Like I've always wanted to have a positive impact on the world, and that's why I actually left consulting, because it wasn't hands-on enough if you wanted. The second is problem solving. I still remember what it's like to be an engineer. And like everywhere in the world, if you want to solve a problem, whatever the problem, you need to know what the problem is. Because if you don't, good luck. You're never going to go anywhere. And so that's why diagnostics makes a lot of sense. And we've talked about that in the last panel. Mental health is invisible. Mental health, you cannot really estimate it, and there is stigma. But thanks to biology, all of this is gone, actually. Mental health is visible. It's in the blood, it's in the biomarkers, and the effect it has on people for stigma, it's just huge. And I guess the last thing, and maybe that was where everything's changed, is actually not taking no for an answer. I'm a woman, so how many times in my life have I heard you cannot do that? And I was like, oh, you think so? Like, watch me. Like people told me, You cannot go into one of the top 3 engineering school in your country. You cannot have a black belt in martial art. You cannot go to MIT. Well, I did. So when 10 years ago, I met the woman who is today is the CSO of the company, and basically she told me, like 10 years ago, I had a vision that we could change mental health with biology, but everybody thinks I'm crazy. Well, what else could I say? I said, okay, I'm in. Let's do that. And so a few years after, we do have a blood test to differentiate depression from bipolar disorder. It's been proven on 800 patients. It has nice performance. It's already commercial in Europe, so we already have patients thanking us for the impact. And I think it's a first step towards a major revolution in mental health.
Thank you very much. I think that's an extraordinary story about a vision and a resilience. So Margaret, heard your story from the first part. You and your husband actually did a lot of work in the mental health area. You did a lot of heavy lifting work, actually try to increase the capital allocation from 2% to 20% for women founders. And so we really want to hear from your perspective, what's the other side of the story from an investor perspective you can share, and what you see as really critical intersections with all of the founders and also for the innovation.
Sure. Like many women here, I think like every single woman here, I'm a multi-hyphenate. I wear many hats. So yes, I'm an investor. I'm passionate about mental health. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a 2-time exit business founder. One of the many things I'm passionate about is driving capital into women founders' hands, in addition to obviously behavioral healthcare and behavioral healthcare tech. So one of the early investments I made was into a company called Cherub, which is like Bumble, but for deal flow. And it started out as an investment vehicle for female founders to find capital. And so initially, a lot of our funders within that particular, within the deal flow were also female funders. So a lot of female VCs out of New York and Silicon Valley and LA. And so that's grown quite a bit. And so I have a major passion in just getting more funding into female hands. We're looking at working with every single VC is signing up for a pledge that we're working on. We're launching it in Davos in 2026. It's called Alpha. Miriam's actually a part of our initiative at the World Economic Forum. And anybody who's interested, I will reach out to me, reach out to Miriam, and we're happy to share information with you. We are actually working on getting 20+% funding for women by 2030. And that's an audacious goal, but that's kind of how we do it. And that's the only way we're going to accomplish is if we have these audacious goals. So that's my new initiative that I'm very passionate about.